Hey everyone, I'm Mariana and welcome to part 2 of my Q&A. If you missed part 1, I will link that down in the info box below, but I am not going to talk anymore and I will just get right into the questions because you guys had a lot to ask. To start things off, what book or movie was selected totally on a whim that turned out to be one of your favorites? I do have to say that in general, a lot of what I read and watch is selected on a whim. I am very much a mood reader and a mood watcher. But if I had to pick something right now, I think for books, I will go with the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. I didn't really know much about it at all when I went into it. I heard a couple people mention it and it turned out to be so good. If you are into dark fantasy, really dark, then you need to check out this trilogy. If you like the politics and the darkness of Game of Thrones / A Song of Ice and Fire, then this is going to be right up your alley. And yeah, I'm a big fan. I've been wanting to reread it pretty much ever since I finished reading it, and I will probably make it happen this year. For a movie, I'm going to go with Inside Llewyn Davis, which I do realize this is a Coen Brothers film, so it's not really that obscure. However, a lot of people are on the fence about this movie and a lot of people did not like it the first time around. Some people just don't like it in general. First time, second time, third viewing, they just don't like this movie. I decided to watch it because Oscar Isaac, so that was my reasoning, and I fell in love with it. This is probably my favorite Coen Brothers film. Yeah. This question is awesome. Resident Evil 7 had a tie-in candle which was said to have a scent of foisty, old timber, and blood. What video game do you wish had a tie-in candle and what would it smell like? Now, if you've never seen my Instagram, you may not know that I am a huge fan of scented candles, so Rob over here is definitely speaking my language. Also, I am generally a big fan of fandom candles. I just think it's a fun concept. So I would have to go with The Witcher because I generally really like woodsy scents, and I think a Witcher candle would definitely have some heavy portion of woodsiness to the scent and probably something herbal. Yeah, like a woodsy, herbal, spicy candle. I feel like you can find this at a store for scented candles, but if it had The Witcher on it, I would be so much more likely to buy it, I can guarantee you. Favorite Paul Thomas Anderson film? I would have to go with There Will Be Blood. Now, I will say that I haven't seen a ton of his films. I know a lot of people love Magnolia, but I have not seen it, unfortunately. I know, I need to watch it. Don't tell me. I will watch it soon, but so far, it's There Will Be Blood. Are you a space person or an ocean person? Have you seen Pacific Rim? And if so, what did you think? I am definitely a space person. You guys know I am a big fan of sci-fi in general, so I have to go with space here. But I have seen Pacific Rim and I really like that movie. The kaiju situation and the giant robots, it's pretty great. I thought it was fun. Have you read any poetry? If so, who are your favorite poets? And also, favorite horror film of the decade? There was a point in my life when I was pretty into poetry. That was around my mid to late teens, but ever since then, it hasn't been something I reach for a lot. And as for my favorite horror film of the decade, that would have to be The Witch. What is your favorite Korean movie? Oldboy, no question about it. How much do you follow the Oscars or any other awards? You know, I used to be really into award shows in general and the Oscars in particular, but the more movies I watch, the less interested I am in whether or not they're nominated for anything. The thing with award shows, and particularly the thing with Oscars, is that they are kind of used a little bit as a marketing tool. I used to find out about movies that I need to catch up on because they've been nominated a lot or because they've been awarded these Oscars. And it's not just me. For a lot of people who don't really stay up to date with movies, this is how they find out what movies are worth watching. And then there's this whole situation with how so many movies that come out at the end of the year in limited release end up getting nominated, and you can't even watch them until the beginning of next year. You can still usually watch them before the awards unless it's a foreign film, then you're kind of out of luck sometimes. But things like that just make me kind of disinterested in award shows because I feel like it's kind of a game that they're playing. There are also genres and films that just don't even get considered for awards, which is kind of frustrating to me. So for all of these reasons, I just don't really care as much anymore. And I think this year may be the first year where I'm probably not even gonna watch the Oscars. What is the book of popular literature you would most like to have made into a film? At the top of my wish list for books to be made into films is Night Film by Marianna Neal. And actually, I want to say thank you to Allie who sent me this amazing edition of Night Film that actually is signed by Marianna Neal. Not only is this the awesome creepy cover that I was having a hard time finding, it's also signed. How awesome is that? But anyways, Night Film is this really dark and moody mystery. I actually have a review of it from a very long time ago on my channel, so you can check it out if you want. It may not be that great anymore. I haven't rewatched it, obviously, since I posted it, but I talk about what the book is actually about and why I loved it so much. I 5-starred that book, and it's great. And if you're looking for a dark, moody read for a rainy day, Night Film, there you go. And it would be amazing as a film in general because it has to do with this very mysterious director of really messed up films and a suicide that may or may not be a suicide. It would be great. I would love to see that on screen. Have you seen any Chilean movie, and what book would you like to have his film version directed by Denis Villeneuve? I don't think I've seen any movies from Chile, but if you have any recommendations, obviously, please leave them down below because you guys know I'm a big fan of foreign language films. As for a book adaptation directed by Denis Villeneuve, I don't really know. I think I want him to step away from sci-fi for a little bit, which he's great at that. I'm not saying that his sci-fi isn't good. Obviously, Arrival was my favorite film of 2016. Blade Runner 2049 was my favorite film of 2017. Whenever Dune comes out, I'm sure that'll be my favorite film of whatever year that is, but I would like to see him go back to some other kinds of storytelling because he's been doing sci-fi for a while now. What would that be? Wait a minute, guys. I was just talking about Night Film, and what if Denis Villeneuve directed Night Film? Oh my God, that would be so amazing. I'm going to stop fangirling about a thing that's never going to happen, but that would be so cool, and we would get to see a much darker side. Not like we haven't seen his dark side, but that would be dark if he directed that. That would be so cool. Can someone make this happen, please? Can someone send Denis Villeneuve this book and be like, you have to make an adaptation of this, please? Okay, this is a ton of questions. Some of these I have answered already, but number 3, what tropes and cliches do you hate the most in fiction? I think I've mentioned this at some point. I am not a fan of the special snow snowflake trope when it comes to books in particular. Like all of the young adult books, that is probably the reason I stopped reading them, have this one special character that's really plain, but in reality really special and amazing and the one and only, and it just gets so old. Now it can be done right. I'm not saying that this is impossible to achieve, but it happens so much that it really frustrates me. I'm also not a fan of "it was all a dream" situation that happens in movies and in books. It frustrates me because it feels like everything I just watched was a waste of time. Like it didn't actually happen, the story didn't happen, it's all in the character's head. What? Screw you. No, it's not. Especially when movies and books use this as the main twist at the end. That's the big thing that was all in the character's head. Oh, get out of here with that. Do you like The Shawshank Redemption or Forrest Gump more? Okay, these are both fantastic, but I'm going to go with The Shawshank Redemption. What is your favorite book in the Harry Potter franchise? That would be the third one, The Prisoner of Azkaban, and that's actually my favorite movie of the franchise as well. I did talk about my most anticipated movies of 2018 in the first part of the Q&A, but the second question here is, which Denis Villeneuve movie do you prefer more, Arrival or Blade Runner 2049? Why do you have to do this to me? Just why? I am not 100% sure on the answer to this. I may have to go with Arrival because I don't know. All of the feelings that I have watching that film just make me want to choose that one. But this is a really tough choice. I'm going to go with Arrival for now, but it's a very close call. This is a terrible question. Don't do that to me ever again. What's your favorite Guillermo del Toro film? Pan's Labyrinth, hands down, one of my favorite films of all time in general. What's your opinion on the remake of Memento or other films that are needlessly being remade? I actually made a video on this a while ago. This was a discussion I did a few years ago, and I am not a fan of remakes at all. There are some exceptions, there are good remakes out there, I know, but in general, why do you need to remake Memento? Are you going to make it better? I really doubt it, because that film is already great. If you're going to remake something, remake a film that is very flawed but has a really good idea that you could improve on. Memento, why? What are you going to do better? How are you going to improve this movie? You're not. Out of these 3 film festivals, which one would you go to? Toronto International Film Festival, Sundance, or Telluride? Toronto, for sure. Would you rather direct a film or write its screenplay? Now, first of all, let's just put this out there. I don't think I would be good at doing either because I have never tried to, so where would I even magically get that skill? But in a world where I am amazing at both of these things, I think I would have to go with writing a screenplay, because writing just sounds like fun. Don't get me wrong, directing sounds like a lot of fun as well, but I would just love to be the person that screws with somebody's mind with my writing and just puts questions in there and makes them agonize over answers. That's the kind of screenplay I would write, let's be real. Which is your favorite book in A Song of Ice and Fire? That would be book 3, A Storm of Swords. I freaking love that book. It is devastating, but it is fantastic. It's not just my favorite book of A Song of Ice and Fire, and it's not just one of my favorite fantasy books. It's generally just one of the most amazing books I've ever read. It's great. I love it. I don't know what else to say. And to go along with that, what do you think is the best season of Game of Thrones, and what are 5 of your favorite episodes? My favorite season or seasons of Game of Thrones kind of coincide with A Storm of Swords, because my favorite seasons are 3 and 4, the ones that cover the events of A Storm of Swords. I just think that's where the show really peaked in quality, in writing, and everything. I love those 2 seasons. Now, as far as my 5 favorite episodes, that is difficult, and these are not in any particular order, by the way, but I would have to say The Watchers on the Wall, which was episode 9 of season 4, that was entirely dedicated to the battle at the wall. Loved that one. Also, the season 4 finale, I think it was called The Children. Those 2 episodes, I actually saw them in IMAX, which was a whole different experience. I wish they did that more, but those 2 episodes are fantastic. Also, I'm a big fan of Hard Home, of course. That episode is amazing. How many was that? That was 3. Okay, so 2 more. The season finale, what was the name of that episode? The Winds of Winter. Okay, The Winds of Winter, the one with Mad Queen Cersei. I thought that was just glorious and amazing and really messed up. And then I would have to say the very first episode, season 1, episode 1, because that's what got me into the show, and I was glued to the screen the minute the show started. I loved it immediately. I didn't start watching the show until season 2 started airing, somewhere in the middle of season 2 as it was airing. I decided that it was time for me to give this Game of Thrones thing a try. I actually didn't think I was going to like it. I was very skeptical going into Game of Thrones because there was so much hype surrounding it, and I've never heard of the book series at that point. And I was just thinking to myself, how good can this show even be? Come on, I'm probably going to find it ridiculous. No, I did not. I loved it from the first minute. We binged the first season in the 2 or 3 days. And when episode 9 of season 1 happened, Baylor, I was traumatized. That was no red wedding, but still, that was one of those moments when I thought, this has to be a dream sequence. There is no way they just killed the main character. And I went into episode 10 thinking, okay, they're about to do the reveal of how this didn't actually happen. No, it happened. That show did that to me. Are you looking forward to the new Lord of the Rings show that Amazon is making? I don't really think I could say that I'm looking forward to it, but I'm going to watch it. I'm going to give it a try. I don't really have high hopes for it. I don't, especially after the Hobbit trilogy. But if they do a great job at it, it'd be really awesome, because I love that whole fictional universe. That'd be amazing, but I don't think it's going to be that great, and it's going to be really hard not to compare it to the Peter Jackson movies. Vanessa from Chbosky, who you should definitely subscribe to because she talks about books and movies like I do, but she wants to know what's my favorite horror film of all time, and I've actually answered her first question in my first part of the Q&A. As much as I don't like picking all-time favorites because it really depends on how I feel that day, I think with horror I can pretty confidently say it's between The Shining, Scream, and Let the Right One In. I know it's not 1, it's 3, but those 3 are the ones that immediately pop into my mind. What is your favorite book to film adaptation, and how accurate to the source is the film? This one's pretty easy. I think a lot of you can guess that that's going to be the Lord of the Rings movies. As far as accuracy goes, it depends on who you ask. I think they're pretty freaking accurate. Yes, there are some things that were changed, but I'm not a Tolkien purist. I don't need Tom Bombadil in The Fellowship of the Ring because he's annoying. I'm sorry. I don't like Tom Bombadil. And there are things that they cut out. There are things that they added to the movies, but I think it was for the best. That's my honest opinion. The other favorite I would have to say is The Perks of Being a Wallflower. I actually am not the biggest fan of the book, but I loved the movie adaptation. How do you decide which book to read next? Do you plan it out ahead of time, set a few must-read books for the year, and see how the chips may fall for the other books, or see what you're in the mood for when you finish off a book? As I mentioned earlier, I am very much a mood reader. I am going to read whatever I feel like reading. I have tried setting TBRs for myself, and I generally fail at them to some extent, sometimes completely. But I do have certain plans for the year. It's not very precise, but there are some books that I kind of look at and I think, okay, these books I would really like to get to this year. The Prestige or Memento? Ooh, probably The Prestige. What are your thoughts on sites like Rotten Tomatoes and Metacritic? Do you use them, or do you have certain critics you read or watch? Metacritic is something that I don't use at all. I used it briefly, and then I found out that they don't value their critics equally. So the score that you see on Metacritic is influenced by certain critics more than by other critics, which I feel like is very misleading. So unless they changed that, I'm not going back to that website. As far as Rotten Tomatoes goes, I definitely check it, but I never base my decision on the tomato meter. It's just not something I do. If I want to watch something, I'm going to watch it, even if it has really bad reviews. Obviously, I'm curious. I want to know what the audience and the critic scores are, but they don't really make me make any kind of decisions that are final. Which genre would you want to see Tarantino tackle as his final film? I have always wanted to see him direct a straight up horror film. I'm not necessarily talking about a slasher. I know people think slasher when they hear horror film, but something that's not just a really violent and bloody thriller, but actual horror. Would love to see that. And the last question I'm going to answer is, what are your hobbies outside of movies, television, and books? First of all, these are very time-consuming hobbies, especially when it comes to binging a TV show or reading a book that you're really into. That can take all day. But I do have another hobby, and that is cross-stitching. I do post updates about it sometimes on my Instagram, but right now I'm working on a Game of Thrones project, getting my Sansa on. As you can see, these are the Game of Thrones house banners and the castles on top. It's very relaxing, and I can combine it with my hobby of watching a movie or listening to an audiobook. All right, guys, I think I've rambled for long enough. I hope you enjoyed this video. That is it for the part 2 of my Q&A. Once again, if you haven't seen part 1, I will link that down in the info box below. But yeah, I will have to do these more often because you guys have a lot of questions, and I know I didn't get to every single question that you guys asked, but there were a lot. So that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it, subscribe to my channel, hit the notification bell. And yeah, I hope you're having an awesome day, and I will see you soon in my next video. Bye.